Hi guys, so I just wanted to actually speak to what is self-sovereignty. So this is a phrase that I coined to describe what it is that I'm passionate about helping people achieve. And the reason I wanted to do a little recording on what it is because so many people have said, I don't get it. And yet to me, it literally is the answer to all of the world's problems, everybody's problem. It's like solution A through Z for pretty much problem A through infinity, right? Because in my experience, coaching, people and working in human behavior and really doing the deep work myself, and delayering and de-armoring and diving within, what I've realized is that all of our problems stem when we seek truth outside of ourselves, where we seek love outside of ourselves, where we seek validation, approval, permission outside of ourselves. And when we have fragmented, fractured parts of ourselves and we essentially live a false version of our truth, which means that we are not whole. And when we're not whole, we cannot be sovereign. So what self-sovereignty means to me, and this is really what this recording is about, it's to share with you a message that I think is so important. And it is literally to the point where it's what I say I coach in. Because whether I'm doing business coaching or health coaching or relationship coaching or self-relationship and self-love coaching, it's all the same thing. You can't have healthy boundaries if you don't have self-sovereignty. You can't be the most epic CEO and lead a quest and call forward people to join you and so that you can leave a legacy and be legendary if you're not self-sovereign. You cannot be in a relationship. Literally, you cannot be in a relationship unless you are self-sovereign, because something other than you is showing up. An empty vessel, a vessel seeking external or seeking external validation, yes, but also a version of you that is actually more pieces of other people than it is itself. It's almost like a chameleon playing a part. So you can't be in a relationship. You can't be unless you're self-sovereign. And so let's just drop into what it is and run through a little bit so that you can maybe better understand what the frame I'm holding for it is. And language is an interesting thing. I love it. I'm obsessed with it. And I'm also open to, and I lovingly receive the feedback / criticism / feedback that I receive from the people who are important to me in my life. And, some of them really felt quite strongly about this phrase. And in a different video, in a different conversation, I openly discuss, and in blogs, that we need to be super grateful for the critics in our lives, because they really do allow us to sit with what we believe, and we can either totally drop into alignment and yes, where I'm at is true for me, and it strengthens, if you will, our volition and our connection with where we're at. Or it can offer us a new way of seeing something and an opportunity to shift. In any case, when self-sovereignty is being questioned by the people that I love and they're like, it feels really separate, I'm like, yes, but here's the thing. That's because of how we've used the word up until now. So often you will hear self-sovereignty described in nations. And usually we talk about it when a nation separates, right, and becomes a sovereign state. But aside from that separation, what sovereignty means, and particularly self-sovereignty, let's just go straight to that, is it's essentially the full right and power of a person over themselves without any interference of outside bodies or sources. It is literally your full right to, and if we go back to that metaphor of a land, it's your full right to decide what goes on inside the boundaries of your queendom, if you're a woman, or your kingdom, or whatever phrase you like to use, your sovereign land. You say what goes here, yeah? You are the leader of your land. And it's essentially supreme authority. It's supreme authority of your experience, your choices, and the state that you get to reside in. So that's what self-sovereignty essentially means. It means to seek truth from within and not without. And I know that kind of doesn't make technically great grammar, but I love it, because I always say to my clients, go within, not without, because when we go with outside, we are literally without self, without the answer, without the wisdom that you ultimately have the gateway and the key to. When we look at the demise of literally, the world, when we look at the abuse of power over people, when we look at the violation of human rights, the violation of this land, most of that stems from a lack mentality or a fear-based mentality. And I just want you to drop in for a second, and if we acknowledge that most humans, because we're human and we are raised in a society that is pre-existing, so that means we come into families that are pre-existing with pre-existing paradigms. So we're it's set up for us essentially to lose initially, right? And I believe the game of life is, for us to remember, not to become, but to remember, to release the parts of us that are not us, to let go of the lies, to release the stories, to rip up the rules, to say no to the obligations, and to go within and go, who the hell am I? Who am I here to be? And if I stopped being who you wanted, and I stopped being a version of you, and I stopped trying to mirror you, and I just sought and ignited that wisdom that's within me, and had confidence in my choices and trust in myself, what would I be able to bring to the world, as opposed to this lack mentality that exists? And if we think about it, this lack mentality and this fear-based mentality is really the causation of a lot of the effects in the world that are not beautiful. So if I was whole and complete within myself and truly just felt like all my needs were met and my happiness, my capability to create all came from within me, then I would have no need to control another or to oppress another, because doing that would not in any way enhance me, because I cannot be more whole. I'm already whole. And from this whole place, all I really want to do is give and serve and connect. And that's kind of the piece I'm going to dive straight there that so many people miss about self-sovereignty. It isn't saying push away from people and become alone in your solo-ness. It's saying go within, do the work that is only your work to do, that can actually only be done by you. And in that awareness and in that sovereignty that you will find once you seek it, you will know wholeness. You will know acceptance of self. You will have awareness of self. All parts of you will reintegrate into the version of you that was meant to show up in this world. And from that place of self-love, self-celebration, self-trust, self-belief, and self-acceptance, from that place, you get to go into the world as a whole being, not something looking to be completed, and just give and serve. Now imagine we took that from one individual and we spread it across the entire globe. I mean, really, would we have wars? No, we wouldn't. Would we have abuse of others? No, because from that place we would be able to also align with truth, and the truth that's in me is equally in everyone else, right? I mean, we actually all tap into the same well. When we de-armor all the wounds and we de-armor all the fear-based programming, we can drop into that well of love and light and deep wisdom. And no part of that well, none, is going to tell us to starve our fellow humans or rape the land that we live on, or the atrocities that exist on this planet. No part of that well is going to align with or give voice to that being the right thing to do. But the thing is, we're so outside of ourselves. We're so in a fear that what we are is not enough. We're so programmed to believe that parts of us are not accepted, parts of us are not okay, because we grew up in families where they denied and disowned and left dormant parts of themselves. So we're like, oh, I see in you, mum, and I see in you, dad, and I got taught at church and I learned at school and I can see in the media, it's not okay to be like that. So let me take that part of me and let me lock it off and let me make it wrong and let me feel shame and guilt. And anytime anyone wants to access it, or anytime it wants to rear its head and I don't want to acknowledge it's there, let me lash out in defense so that no one knows, not even me, because I buried it so deep that that's really there inside of me. And so from this constant defense, attack, and then cling, come and make me whole reality that we are living in, that's where we lose sight of what's real. That's when we lose sight of connection, because we think we're connected because we're constantly going out, but we're not going out whole. We're not going out in a real, authentic, aligned, and awakened way. So, think about a relationship. If I'm showing up as a fragmented, fractured, false, essentially, version of myself, playing a role. And I might be willingly playing it. I often very openly discuss in my whole womanhood and my Gypsy Goddess Queen conversations that, I very much grew up with certain parts of me, essentially, the goddess aspect of me, that deep feminine aspect, very much dormant. And I had a very strong queen energy, which is slightly more masculine anyway, and I thought that the world was better served and that my family and the people I love were better served by me being that version of myself that was masculine in control, had clarity, would drive, and would never stop. Certainly would never receive help, right? So it's not that was not real, it just wasn't the whole version of me. And then by making other parts of me wrong, I actually cheated the world of a version of Marina that was more compassionate and more courageous, just more, like more of the everything, but not more of the things that we think we need to be, right? We're chasing externally. And this is the other thing, is without sovereignty, we also make the mistake of thinking that other things are going to complete us. Particularly for me when I was younger, it wasn't even consciously like the new shoes, the new dress, the new house is going to complete me, but it was the chase. I was in the chase in the external world of the consumerism, of the achievement and attainment race that so many of us are on, which of course when we get more of that stuff, we just seek more and more of it, right? So when you're empty and hollow inside and you're not whole and you're not deeply in knowing and communication with self, it's all outside. And so self-sovereignty is really this journey within, because when we're not within, we're without. We are with the outside and also without everything that is true and whole for us. An important part of this conversation is also to sort of own the fact that it's not our fault that we are initially wired not to be sovereign. We come into the world and we very quickly learn that we're relationally dependent. We need our parents, we need someone to feed us, or guess what, we die. So in that moment we learn, and it makes sense, because remember, survival as this animal being, this skin suit that I am when I choose to be human and come into this world, that need for survival is priority number one. Otherwise the game is already over, right? But when we choose to be human, we also have to accept that we are one of many and that we require others to stay alive. Nothing wrong with that. But with that knowing comes a distortion of truth, which is, I need your love, I need your approval to stay alive. That's what it gets coded as. And in many other talks that I give, I talk about really the two fundamental needs that are often kneecapping us on so many levels, is the need to be right and the need to belong. And this need to belong is survivally wired. If I am part of the tribe, if the tribe values me, they will take care of me. And in that one of many, I've got a much greater chance of survival. In that one of many, I will live. So with compassion, it's important to understand you didn't do this wrong. It's part of the game. And I really feel that as we evolve and as we expand into and get to experience more of our wholeness, we get to journey in a way that's truly exciting and explore for ourselves what it means to be, yes, I understand that I can be in relation to others, but as a whole sovereign adult, who am I when I don't base my worth on your evaluation of me? It's a truly powerful place to come from. So I suppose ironically, self-sovereignty sounds like selfishness, because it's saying, go within, go and figure out who you are, go and find your wholeness within yourself. Yes, it sounds very solo, but does it make sense that once we have absolute accountability, we stop blaming, we stop projecting, we start taking ownership of the stuff that is running within us? When we get radically honest, we stop running the stories about what you did to me and how you should have done that. Again, blaming, expectations, comparison. When we're radically honest and we're absolutely accountable and truly aware of our own stuff, and we're in absolute acceptance that we are co-creators of everything that we experience, plus when we have unconditional love, we're able to truly extend that, because let's be honest, guys, most of the love we see in the world is super transactional. And very much coming from a fear or a scarcity place, definitely not from wholeness, and definitely not from true unconditional acceptance. Because if it was, you would happily release that person from the relationship, you would happily want for them something that is not in your best interest. But again, you can only do that if you're whole, if you're sovereign. Because if you're not, you literally think, will I survive? Will I survive if they leave? I don't know, because I've never been alone. I don't know if I'll be all right by myself. So sovereignty means that you can actually show up as a better partner, and in greater connection with other people, any relationship. So it sounds selfish, and I often kind of get a bit irritated anyway by this whole don't be so full of yourself. And my answer to that is, who the heck are you supposed to be full of if not yourself? Like, just think about that statement for a second. It's so ridiculous. Don't be full of yourself. What, you want me to be full of dogma and doctrine and a mix of different cultural and media and public, religious beliefs? You want me to be a mix of your fears and your scarcity mindset? Like, that's crazy. And yet that's actually what we all are for the most part, until we step into self-sovereignty and until we kind of go, you know what, I am full of myself and I freaking like myself. And I may not accept that all parts of me are always positive, but all parts of me are welcome here. So when we drop guilt and shame, which are, of course, those lower frequencies, we get to vibrate higher. We get to bring and be of effect in the world at a more positive level. And that does definitely take deep compassion for self. But you can imagine, I'm sure, when you step into deep compassion for self around these things, you can't help but have that compassion for another. Because, to another, I am another. In me, I see you, and in you, I see me. And I've come to accept those shadows and those lights within me. And I've come to make those choices. And I see you struggling in that space too. And now I can offer you compassion because I have been in those trenches. I have cleaned those wounds. And so there is no judgment there because you've learned to not judge yourself. You've overcome the judgment that is so epidemic in our culture. And this acceptance of our differences and celebration of our uniqueness and compassion for one another, that's where deep connection comes from. So sovereignty might sound selfish, but it's actually the bridge to true, deep, heart to heart, soul to soul, conscious connection. So self-sovereignty really means to reclaim your power and to remember your worth, because it is innate and it is infinite, to access your authority to choose, to own your preferences, and to attune to your own wants and needs. So many of us literally don't know what we actually want or what we need. I work with so many women and it's like, well, I've got to do this for them, and there's so much martyrdom, and then it's also kind of knee deep up with like victimhood, that lots of women, and I'm sure men too, don't actually know what they need, let alone what they want. And then once we do that, once we access, the awareness, and we gain the authority, and we give ourselves trust to do it, then we can actually action the ability to meet our wants and needs and create the realities we desire. And just think for a second how that takes the pressure off anyone else having to do it for us, right? So being self-sovereign means being whole and complete and self-sufficient and self-inspired and self-attuned, resilient and resistant to the attacks and projections of others. And it also means to open to deep love and true connection with self, with source, and with others. To be self-sovereign definitely requires a lot of selves. It requires all of our selves coming back to capital S self, coming back together and making no part of us wrong. And to do that, to journey into that space, requires self-awareness first and foremost. Then self-exploration, self-acceptance. What is there? I see it and I am okay with it. I will no longer shame it or blame it, disown it, leave it dormant, fragment it. There's no need. And from that place of self-acceptance, now we can drop into self-trust, because we've bared those parts of ourselves to ourselves, and we get to journey into a place where it's like, I trust you now to speak for me because you know me. I trust you now to enact the boundaries that keep me safe because you know me. You are in the knowing of the truth of me, which of course extends us into self-compassion. Then of course we have self-esteem, because now we know our worth, which leads to self-belief and self-confidence and self-love. And from self-love we have self-celebration. So many selves, but all of them are required in sovereign selves. In self-sovereignty is where we find it all. So self-sovereignty definitely requires that we stop distorting, disowning, leaving dormant parts of ourselves. It means we need to stop suppressing, repressing, rejecting, fragmenting, fracturing, and pretending. It definitely means that we need to stop rejecting and making wrong. We need to stop projecting and blaming and shaming any parts of ourselves. And in doing that, guess what? We learn to do it. It's to stop doing it to other people as well. I mean, it really is one of the most often heard things, that you can't really love another until you love yourself. And I think we don't truly understand that until we really understand it. We can't really know about it until we're in the knowing of it and it's embodied in our bodies. We currently live in a reality and an illusion where we're abdicating our power and our sovereignty by incessantly and obsessively seeking validation from everyone and everything outside of ourselves. We literally give away our power every day, by either blaming or asking or seeking permission or worrying about what everyone else is thinking, but just for 2 seconds realize that everybody else is doing the same thing. So no one on the planet is actually worrying about you anyway, because they're worrying about themselves and your perception of them. Everybody's outside of themselves. No one's home. No one's home, no one's real. It's an illusion. And we're all stuck in the same paradigm until some of us wake the hell up. And when we wake up, we awaken into our truth. Then we can drop into attunement, alignment, and we can ascend into our wholeness, which is what the world needs us to do. So what does it take to become self-sovereign? It takes courage. I'm not going to lie. It takes a lot of courage, because it takes courage for us, first of all, to be curious. Where in me have I gone astray? Where in me have I closed off parts of myself? Where in me can I open back up? Where in me can I adventure? And that takes curiosity, but to be curious in that way, to open the cupboard on the boogie monster, oh my gosh, that takes so much courage. But ironically, once you do it, you realize it's actually scarier staying in the illusion than it is staying in the truth. Once you're in the truth and you're sovereign, you access a power that's not power over, it's just an infinite wholeness, a confidence, a contentment, an ease, a grace, a peace. And that real power is just waiting for us, the other side of the fear, which takes courage. So it takes courage, it takes curiosity, and it takes compassion. Compassion to look there and not judge and not shame, and to really say, you know what? Yes, we made some mistakes. Yes, we're a little flawed, but then we get to choose. We get to choose to rip up and rewrite the rules. We get to weed out and plant new beliefs. We get to shed the stories and shed the shame. We get to say no to the obligations of guilt. We get to choose, and choice is our superpower. It's always been our superpower. We just haven't been using it well. Most of us can't even discern what's my wants, what's my beliefs versus yours. We can't discern, good from evil, because we haven't been in the action of asking ourselves. We're asking everyone else. So it also requires choice, courage, curiosity, compassion, and choice. And then the last thing it requires is commitment. Commitment to the journey of returning and expanding into your wholeness, because it does take time, and you are going to fall off the bandwagon, and you're going to make a mess of it, and you're going to fly, and you're going to fail, and then you're going to soar, and then you're going to get stuck, and it's all part of it. So commitment to the course is essential. But I really hope you journey with me, because I'm here to help you step into your wholeness, to live your light, to stand in your self-sovereignty, to magnify your more, and just give the world all of you, because all of you is welcome here. I am you, I see you, and I love you. Thanks for listening, guys.